In our headlines on this Thursday afternoon, July 27th, here in South Korea. The agreement that brought an end to brutal conflict on the Korean peninsula turns 70 years old today, and commemorative events are being held in both South and North Korea. Meanwhile, the U.S. Federal Reserve in its July session raises its key interest rate by 25 basis points to its highest in 22 years, as early expected by economists in the country. Back on the local front, Samsung launches its flagship foldable phones on its home turf for the first time Wednesday with an Unpacked event that displayed its edge in the market. The remains of 7 South Korean soldiers who died fighting for their country some 7 decades ago have returned home. They landed here Wednesday night on the eve of the 70th anniversary of the Korean Armistice Agreement. Our senior presidential correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
More than 7 decades after he fought and died in the Korean War, the remains of the then 19-year-old Private First Class Chae-nak came home to South Korea and his surviving family. Carried in the arms of his nephew, who is currently serving in the Navy, Chae was reunited with his youngest brother, who was 6 years old when Chae died in 1950, but is now approaching 80.
You are now in the arms of my boy who we sent to the Navy. Is he holding you comfortably? Big brother, don't worry about our country anymore, but rest peacefully in our land. I will live in gratitude to our nation for bringing you back to us.
Chae had been identified among the 7 sets of remains of South Korean soldiers killed during the 1950-53 war, handed over from US custody in Hawaii and flown to Seoul Air Base on Wednesday evening. Coming home on an Air Force tanker escorted by a squadron of F-35A fighter jets, the remains of the fallen soldiers received a hero's welcome in a reception ceremony hosted by President Yoon Suk-yeol. Yoon was joined by top Korean and US military officials to pay their utmost respects, greeting the arrival with the highest military honor, a 21-gun salute. Yoon presented each of the 7 soldiers, 6 of them yet to be identified, with combat medals for their bravery and sacrifice. The repatriated troops were among the remains collected by both US and North Korean excavations during the war and in the decades following. Initially believed to be American soldiers, the remains were later identified through joint forensic analysis as troops of the South Korean Army. Chae's remains were delivered to Seoul National Cemetery, the resting place for fallen patriots and heroes, while the other 6 sets of remains will undergo forensics and DNA testing to identify the soldiers. Since 2012, the remains of 313 troops have been repatriated to South Korea from the US over 7 occasions. Only 19 of them so far have been identified. After the president pledged last month all-out efforts to return the nation's war dead to the arms of their surviving families, his office said on Wednesday that Yoon's first ceremony for the fallen soldiers' remains was organized with the conviction that the lives lost in the line of duty should serve as a call for our duty to remember them. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And accordingly, a banquet in honor of the foreign veterans of the Korean War was held also on the eve of the 70th anniversary of the armistice in the southern port city of Busan. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung covers that emotional event and more.
93-year-old British veteran Colin Thackeray passionately sings the Korean traditional folk song Arirang. Thackeray is among the 64 Korean War veterans currently in South Korea to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the Korean War Armistice Agreement. He was invited to sing the song at the thank you banquet in Busan on Wednesday evening, recalling the times he had done with his comrades during the war. The Minister of Patriots and Veterans Affairs also showed appreciation for their sacrifice and contributions to the development of South Korea.
The solidarity brought together 16 nations that sent their combat troops, 6 nations that provided medical support, and 38 nations that sent materials to Korea. These countries gave us the greatest victory and forces that led to the successful post-war reconstruction of our country.
U.S.-Korean War veteran William Word said he's been thanked many times, but all the honor should go to the Korean people.
When I went home, my home was still standing. My family was complete. But when survival came along, the people of Korea rebuild their nation, their homes, their cities, their families, and their lives.
South Korea also hosted the 2023 Ministerial Summit on Veterans Affairs, which was attended by government delegations from 22 countries who supported South Korea during the Korean War. Luxembourg's Prime Minister Xavier Bettel said no matter how far away Luxembourg is from South Korea, solidarity and support are what matter when fighting for values and democracy.
But we know how important it is to fight for democracies. The fight for values has no borders, and you find everywhere partners to fight when it's time to defend democracies.
Minister Park proposed a joint declaration to reaffirm the values of freedom defended by the 22 nations 70 years ago, as well as joint efforts toward achieving world peace. South Korea also held bilateral discussions with Australia, France, Luxembourg, and Turkey to further solidify the friendships established during the Korean War. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News, Busan.
U.S. President Joe Biden has highlighted the unbreakable Seoul-Washington alliance that was forged by the soldiers of the Korean War who fought side by side. In this year's proclamation on National Korean War Veterans Armistice Day, President Biden also called for revitalizing of the commitment to democratic values that the veterans serve for and for continued cooperation with South Korea on promoting global peace and prosperity. Mr. Biden further touched upon President Yoon Suk-yeol's visit to the Korean War Veterans Memorial in the U.S. back in April, describing it as a solemn reminder that their alliance is built on shared beliefs. He also pledged more efforts to ensure that all missing heroes return home. Commemorative events to mark the signing of the armistice that ended the brutal confrontations on the Korean peninsula are being held here and across the border, but the atmosphere is starkly different. Our Unification Ministry correspondent Lee explains.
Thursday marks the 70th anniversary of the armistice that ended fighting in the Korean War. The South and the North mark this day quite differently. South Korea calls it the Day of the Korean War Armistice Agreement, while the North calls it Victory Day. Here in Seoul, the day is a somber occasion. President Yoon Suk-yeol invited dozens of foreign war veterans to honor those who died during the war. Government delegations and ambassadors from the 22 countries who fought for South Korea during the war also visited the country, where they will visit the UN Memorial Cemetery in Busan City. Seoul also reaffirms the South Korea-U.S. alliance on this day, and U.S. President Joe Biden also gave a speech on Wednesday local time where he highlighted that Seoul and Washington should strengthen ties to contribute to global peace and prosperity. On the other side, Pyongyang celebrates the day rather festively. North Korea invited delegations from China and Russia amid their preparation for huge celebrations with thousands of citizens. They have rehearsed for months for this day as the North sees the truce as a victory in the, quote, Grand Fatherland Liberation War. A giant military parade is usually seen in the capital city, where leader Kim Jong-un could present his nuclear-capable missiles. Now a military parade for this year's anniversary is expected to take place tonight. Kim Jong-un is expected to take part in the event, but whether he will make a speech is unknown. Some observers say Pyongyang will likely reveal intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and tactical nuclear weapons during the event. The anniversary this year comes amid heightened tensions between Seoul and Pyongyang following North Korea's recent missile tests and South Korean-U.S. joint military exercises. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
Prime Minister Han Duck-soo has called for proactive government efforts to ensure public well-being amid the latest heat wave here on the local front. Seoul's Health Ministry has been asked to place priority on the elderly and the less privileged, while the Labour Ministry has been assigned with the task of better protecting outdoor workers at high risk of dangerous heat exposure and related accidents. Other ministries have also been urged to adopt a hands-on approach with regard to prevention and safety measures. Over in the U.S., in line with earlier projections by pundits that the country's Federal Reserve has hiked its benchmark interest rate by 25 basis points to its highest in over 2 decades. Our Ian Jin has more.
On Wednesday, the U.S. Federal Reserve raised its key interest rates by 25 basis points, putting its lending rate in the 5.25% to 5.5% range. The borrowing rate in the U.S. has now reached its highest level since 2001. The rate hike comes after a rate freeze in the previous Federal Open Market Committee meeting, and despite consumer price increases slowing down. Consumer prices increased just 3% on year in June, marking the lowest annual inflation rate in more than 2 years. But assessing it to still be too high, the U.S. Fed is looking to bring the rate further down to its target of 2%. When asked if a further rate hike is possible at the next FOMC meeting slated for September, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell said such a move is not out of the question.
It is certainly possible that we would raise funds again at the September meeting if the data warranted. And I would also say it's possible that we would choose to hold steady at that meeting.
Powell acknowledged that the economy has proved to be surprisingly resilient despite the Fed's rapid rate hikes. Though inflation has reached its slowest pace in 2 years, the economy is still growing too fast for inflation to fall back to the Fed's 2% target, as consumer confidence is at its highest level in 2 years. Americans keep spending and businesses keep adding jobs. Powell added that it's too early to tell when the U.S. Central Bank can start cutting its rates, but also revealed that the Fed's staff economists no longer foresee a recession. Some economists think the Fed might decide to forego a rate increase in September before weighing a possible hike in November. Ian Jin, Arirang News.
And the Federal Reserve's latest rate hike has sparked speculation about the Bank of Korea's future policy direction as the rate gap between the two countries stands at a new high. Our Moon Hye-ryun reports.
With the Fed's latest decision to hike the key interest rate by 25 basis points, the difference in key interest rates between South Korea and the United States has reached an all-time high. The FOMC announced Thursday that it had lifted its interest rate to the 5.25 to 5.5% range, bringing the gap between it and the Bank of Korea's rate of 3.5% to 2 percentage points. This is the first time in history that the rate difference between the allies has reached the 2 percentage point mark, prompting concerns over the impact this could have on the South Korean won-US dollar exchange rate and sparking interest in the Korean Central Bank's response. The won has been losing ground against the greenback, closing below the $1,301 rate at 1,275 won on Wednesday as a result of sluggish IT exports and the country logging a trade deficit once again in July. An increase in interest rates by major economies like the United States often leads to a devaluation of other currencies such as the Korean won, as investors are drawn towards more profitable investment prospects. The BOK has kept its benchmark rate at 3.5% for nearly half a year now, with its latest decision 2 weeks ago to maintain the rate for the 5th month in a row. Speaking at a central bank meeting on Thursday, Deputy Chief Lee Seung-un remarked that there is still a long way to go until inflation recovers to 2% and that further monetary tightening may be necessary despite the consumer price index slowing to the 2% range in June for the first time in 21 months. The central bank had previously announced that rate hikes to 3.75% may be possible amid inflation uncertainty, with its inflation forecast for July announced on Wednesday at 3.3%. He also said the central bank will closely monitor related market conditions by watching out for increased volatility in domestic and foreign financial markets due to changes in policy expectations. Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho, also speaking on Thursday, said the government has plans to stabilize the domestic market.
The government will continue to strengthen resilience against external factors by bolstering the current account balance and other economic fundamentals, ensuring that South Korea's financial and foreign exchange markets are stable.
Moon Hye-ryun, Arirang News.
Korea's export and import values and terms of trade all experienced a turnaround in June. According to the Bank of Korea on this Thursday, the export value index for last month rose 7.5% on year amid greater outbound shipments of chemical products. The value of imports also grew 4.4%, driven by computers and electronic devices. Now, these favorable figures are the first in 4 months. And based on these findings, Korea's net barter terms of trade gained 0.2%, marking an upswing after 27 months. Terms of trade measure the amount a country can buy in imports for each unit it exports. Samsung Electronics' operating profit plunged 95% in the second quarter of this year amid the continued contraction in chip demand. According to a regulatory filing on this Thursday, the company reported an operating profit of some $526 million for the April to June period, its lowest return in 14 years. Sales also slumped over 22% on year to post $47.2 billion. The latest figure come as its chip-making division posted a deficit of around $3.4 billion in the second quarter. Accordingly, Samsung's net profit for the second quarter amounted to $1.4 billion, down almost 85% on year. Staying with Samsung, the company hosted its Galaxy Unpacked event here in Korea for the first time ever. And while the launch of its latest flagship foldable phones comes amid a more crowded landscape, industry insiders believe Samsung will maintain its lead. Our business correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
Another stride forward has been made by Samsung Electronics in the race to perfect folding smartphones. The South Korean tech giant showcased its latest fifth-generation Galaxy foldable smartphones at its annual Unpacked event on Wednesday in Seoul.
When technology seamlessly adapts to the world around us, it allows us to be open to new ideas, open for a world of unlimited possibilities. That's exactly what Samsung Galaxy lets us do.
This year's Unpacked was all about innovative design and overcoming weaknesses in the previous version. With a larger cover display of 3.4 inches, almost double the size of the previous version, the Galaxy Z Flip5 allows a variety of functions, including texting, even when it's folded. Users can quickly and effortlessly access more information than before, such as checking the weather, controlling the device's music player, and catching up on the latest global stock market updates. Users can also review, adjust the color tone, or delete images easily with the Quick View function on the cover display. When taking a photo of a friend, Dual Preview allows both the subject and the user to see the image on the cover and main screen simultaneously, so they can make adjustments in real time for the perfect shot.
The new cover screen is really great. It improves all what we can do with the screen, and I need to buy one, to be honest.
The biggest change to both the Z Flip5 and the Z Fold5 is the new hinge that allows the phones to close completely while minimizing screen creases. The weight of the Galaxy Z Fold5 is 253 grams, making it the lightest and thinnest design among all the Galaxy Z Fold series released to date. In terms of function, multitasking has been significantly enhanced compared to previous models. Taskbar, which allows a quick switching between applications, has been improved to provide access to up to 4 recently used apps. Additionally, the two-handed drag and drop feature allows users to select an image from the gallery with one hand and easily paste it into Samsung Notes using the other hand, making app and screen switching even more convenient. One expert says the latest devices are expected to help Samsung continue to lead the global foldable market.
Competition in the foldable market seems to have intensified as companies like Motorola and Google have also entered the market. However, a company that first entered the market with better technologies would dominate. Samsung is expected to lead the market.
Pre-orders for the phone start next Tuesday in South Korea and will be available from August 11th. Retail prices start at $999 for the Galaxy Z Flip5 and $1,799 for the Galaxy Z Fold5. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
Defense company Hanwha Aerospace has won a multi-billion-dollar contract to build over 100 armored vehicles for the Australian Army. The Australian government on Thursday announced it had selected the Korean company to build 129 Redback infantry fighting vehicles. It claimed the project will have a value of between $3.4 billion and $4.7 billion. The project was originally valued at around $7 billion, but was scaled back earlier this year, with the order for 450 infantry vehicles reduced to 129. Hanwha will begin its delivery from the second half of 2027.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In New York City, at least 12 people have been injured after a construction crane caught fire and partially collapsed. The incident took place on Wednesday morning local time at a construction site on 10th Avenue in Midtown Manhattan. 9 civilians, including construction workers and 3 firefighters, are among the wounded. All are expected to make a full recovery. Footage of the scene shows the top of the crane in flames before its boom collapses before striking a nearby building. The crane was 45 stories high and was lifting around 16 tons of concrete when its operator noticed the fire and unsuccessfully tried to put it out. It's believed the fire weakened the crane's cabling, causing the collapse. An investigation into the incident has been launched. Irish singer Sinead O'Connor has died at the age of 56. News of her passing was shared by her family on Wednesday, with no details of her death given. O'Connor had been open about her decades-long struggle with mental illness, as well as her struggle following the suicide of her 17-year-old son in January 2022. She is best known for her worldwide #1 single, Nothing Compares to You, which was written by Prince. O'Connor was also an outspoken activist who famously ripped up a picture of the Pope during a live performance in 1993 on NBC's Saturday Night Live, in protest over child sexual abuse in the Catholic Church. She released 10 albums between 1987 and 2014 and was reportedly working on another album for release next year. And finally, Hollywood actor Kevin Spacey has been cleared of sexual assault charges by a London court. Following 12 hours of deliberations on Wednesday, the jury found the 64-year-old not guilty of sexually assaulting 4 men in their 20s and 30s between 2004 and 2013. Spacey was the artistic director of a major London playhouse at the time. During the nearly month-long trial, Spacey claimed that accusations against him were financially motivated. But prosecutors argued that the 2-time Oscar-winning actor used his fame to sexually abuse his accusers. The ruling comes a year after a federal jury in Manhattan found the actor not liable for battery in a lawsuit filed by actor Anthony Rapp. He had accused Spacey of making sexual advances in 1986 when Rapp was 14. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. The weather agency announced the official end of the rainy season yesterday, ending at a similar time compared to previous years. Now we need to brace for days of extreme heat with sudden rain. Heat wave alerts are in place across much of Korea, with Gyeongju seeing highs going up as high as 35 degrees Celsius. Then there will be a chance of sudden rain during the day with up to 80 millimeters in the forecast. It could come down heavily once it begins to rain. So please, those near the water need to beware of heavy passing showers. Feels like temperatures will be a couple of degrees higher due to the high humidity. And when it does not rain, strong UV rays will beam down. So plan accordingly if you're heading outdoors. Have your sun protection and umbrella ready. The sweltering summer heat keeps coming and will stay with us day and night. In fact, the number of heat-related illness patients is on the rise. Drink plenty of water and avoid being outdoors during the hottest parts of the day. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
And those are the headlines at this hour. We'll return with our panel session after this break. Thank you for now.